So with this particular company, so this is my second company that I've started. And the idea started about 2020, in between the second and the first and the second Corona pandemic. I was looking for actually a second startup idea to find. At that point, I was finishing my PhD. I had 1 year to go, and I thought it would be fantastic to start working on something because I knew from my past experience that it takes about a year to start a company. So 2020 August, I was looking for an idea that would be related to kind of biology, biotech, which I've been kind of studying over the last 11 years now. And this is when I came up with an idea for the drink. I went to Estonia. I was standing and looking at the shelf of this non-alcoholic drinks called Quas, and it kind of struck me because I had the relevant background, so I knew that that was a fermented non-alcoholic drink, and I stopped drinking alcohol. By that point, it was 7 years, and I stopped drinking soft drinks as well. Juices are made from concentrates. Basically, every time I would go for a social event, I would be struggling to find anything to drink. And there was me standing looking at my favorite kind of drink from childhood, and I thought, look, I love this drink. The process to make it, it's the fermentation process. By that point, I was already kind of almost finishing my PhD in biotechnology, so I thought, let me just try to make it myself. But before that, of course, I had to do the market research to kind of understand whether there's market, because I might not have been drinking for 7 years, but I also knew that I was a little bit crazy about it. Most people around me were drinking alcohol, and there was not a problem. So this is when I started digging and doing the research, market research, and I realized that I might have been weird at the very start, and that was 2020. The trend has already started, and the non-alcoholic market has been absolutely booming compared to all the other kind of fast-moving consumer goods. So that was kind of the very, very beginning that gave me an indication. It's not just something that I'm passionate about. It's a problem that I personally kind of experienced myself. And then I thought, okay, well, actually there's a market, so it might actually work as a business as well. By that point, I had no clue about the health benefits behind it. I just wanted a low sugar, healthy, natural, non-alcoholic drink.
What about the recognition of it? Because I know that you've got other things like kefir that have made the transition, and it took quite a while for people to understand what it is. Is it the same with kvass?
That's a good question. So for me, the realization started when I started experiencing something that I didn't expect myself. So as I was developing, so that was August 2020 when I kind of came up with an idea, and then in September I started experimenting. I read everything I could have read online about the drink, how you make it, and because it's one of the kind of national drinks with over 1,000 years old of history, there are obviously thousands of recipes you can follow, which makes everything even more confusing, and most people don't actually understand what's happening, why you do this, that, the fermentation process, what's important, the variables, etc. So I kind of started digging into this scientifically, and as I started experimenting with different ingredients, fermentation processes, conditions, I started drinking, liters of the stuff myself, and I think it was like 4 or 5 months in, I started noticing something. So to understand that part, you need to understand something about myself. So I've been doing track and field events for 22 years now, and there's one thing that I've been always struggling with, and that's called exercise-induced asthma. I didn't know I had it for most of this time actually, until I went to a doctor and they said, this is what it is, try the inhaler, it's going to fix you. I tried it changed everything. And for the last 20 years essentially, I've been regularly exercising 3-4 times a week. I would go for a run about 10 kilometers, and almost every time I would go for a run, I would experience exercise-induced asthma. And because I do this regularly, and I'm a scientist, and obviously that disease annoyed me, I've always been kind of conscious about it and keeping an eye on the progression, and I'm still trying to understand what are the drivers, because actually science still doesn't have an answer behind it. And what happened as I started drinking more kvass without changing anything about my lifestyle or diet or anything else? Remember, I was a student for the last 10 years, everything was very consistent. I didn't have much money, and there hasn't been any change in my life apart from the drink. So what happened is that at some point, my asthma symptoms completely disappeared. And at first I was like, oh, first time you go for a run and doesn't trigger it, you think it's, an accident. But then it happened second time, third time, fourth time. And now I cannot remember last time when I had asthma symptoms. But when it started happening, I started questioning it as a scientist. And this is when I started digging into the literature, and I started realizing that, first of all, the impact of the gut microbiome, the importance of it, the fact that I've been living a student diet for the last 10 years definitely didn't help my gut microbiome in terms of the diversity and the nutritions, etc. And then I realized that the drink that I really loved and enjoyed for all my life, and the business that I started primarily to kind of help myself to find a good non-alcoholic drink, the unique selling point of that product wasn't the fact that it was non-alcoholic or low in sugar or all natural. The unique selling point and the main benefit is actually the impact that it has on your gut microbiome and your overall health. And then when you look, even at the moment, you look at the kvass market, which is growing extremely rapidly right now, over 10% year on year, you will see that there's literally nobody on the market who understands the value of the product to our gut health. So we became basically not just the first company in the UK to produce genuine kvass, but actually the first one to market it as a health product that could positively impact people's health, people's gut microbiome, but of course serve as a very nice, refreshing, soft drink for a different market that is also blooming really, really fast.
Is there, we were talking about the recognition factor as to whether it's well known. When you have something that has health benefits, what's the promotion part of that? Is it the health benefits or the fact that it tastes good, or do you try and combine the two? Because sometimes people think, oh, it's a health drink, I'm not going to be interested. Or
this is a very, very good question, and this is something that I would say we're still experimenting and trying to understand what is driving. Because as you mentioned, so the drink itself fits into several very rapidly growing categories. One of them is non-alcoholic adult drinks. Super fast growing. There are many competitors on the market. This is what millennials want. The Gen Zs is the least drinking generation ever. This is one segment. There's also the gut microbiome health part. And there are lots of people that are, starting to understand the importance of their diet, starting to understand the importance of their gut microbiome, and maybe start I think it always starts with an experimentation for them, because they're trying to improve their health, and maybe in the past they would accept a certain thing, like with my asthma, for example. I've always accepted it, and I thought I had no control over it or influence of it. But many people, and actually 3 out of 4 people living in the UK, are currently affected by some sort of chronic condition, and a lot of those conditions are driven by the gut bacteria, which basically regulate our inflammation, which basically impacts our entire body through the immune system, right? So there's a second market for that kind of part. And then there's also the functional drinks. All the CBD drinks, for example, in the UK are growing right now. So that's a kind of additional category. How do we market it ourselves? It's a progressive challenge, I would say, because when I started the drink, the easiest way for us to kind of start getting traction was actually targeting people that already know what kvass is as a drink. And for those people, because they know what kvass is, most of them actually don't know about the health benefits. They might really enjoy the kind of the taste of it. They might really enjoy the fact that it's naturally produced, that it's not, and that this is how it's been produced for 40 years ago. Right now, if you take kvass, it's a completely different drink. It's been completely commercialized, essentially made from syrups that are diluted with water, packed with sugar, carbonated with CO2. Often there is no fermentation at all. So it's a whole kind of kvass type drink that you can find at the moment in the UK in Eastern European shops. So I was kind of, when I just started working on the drink, the idea was to target people that already know what kvass is as a drink, but also people that understand that the drink has changed quite a lot over the last 40 years. And a lot of those people remember what it used to taste when it was produced naturally, with very short shelf life, without pasteurization, without filtration. And those people became our kind of first customers. And at the moment, they're still kind of one of the main demographics that we're capturing. But the second kind of wave of customers for us is trying to target people that are more concerned about health. So in this case, we're looking at all the vegans, we're looking at all the kind of healthy gut microbiome people that might already consume let's say kombucha or kefir, or maybe they want to consume kefir, for example, because they've heard it's good for them, but they might not be that lactose tolerant, you know. So they might be exploring kind of what else is there on the market. And there are a few options, of course. They could be, you know, the sauerkraut, your kimchi, your kombuchas that are produced genuinely and not completely commercialized. So there is some choice. But in between those products, kvass takes a quite unique position because of the substrate, and in this case it's the sugars that come from rye barley, which are being fermented, and of course the starter culture. Because if you take kefir, you would have kefir grains, we're talking about genuinely produced kefir, not completely commercialized. You have kefir grains that are participating in the fermentation. They have their own kind of culture, the microbiome, and the benefits associated with it. You have kombucha, which is produced using SCOBY. Again, it's a symbiotic relationship of bacteria plus yeasts. And then you have genuinely produced kvass, which is what we're doing, and we're using the power of the sourdough, which then kind of ferments the sugars extracted from rye barley.
And as far as the microbiome and the bacteria, obviously everybody's microbiome is different. How does it benefit different people?
That's a good question. We need to, first of all, we need to understand that all of the gut microbiome science is extremely rapidly evolving and associating certain benefits with certain products, especially products that are kind of genuinely produced. We're talking about products that don't have just one strain, for example, like you take your Actimel, you know, one strain, or a Yakult one strain, which is relatively easy to kind of do a study, link it to a certain benefit, and this is it. But a lot of the products that people have been consuming for thousands of years historically, if they're naturally produced, they would have a very mixed diversity of different bacteria inside of them, the microbiome of the drink. And trying to correlate those kind of bacteria with the exact benefits, it becomes extremely complicated. And actually, as far as I know, you know, nobody has done it. There are certain studies that looked at, for example, kefir and the influence, how it could reduce the cholesterol levels and things like this, which kind of involves a little bit more complicated communities than the product itself. But this science is very, very kind of only starting now to develop.
How do you, in terms of the marketing, how do you promote the health benefits without saying so much that, you know, it strays into the you can't say that?
Yeah, very good question. The regulation, of course, is very important because if we were developing a certain therapeutic, there would be certain regulations that we need to comply in terms of marketing. If we were claiming certain health benefits as well, we would need to comply with the different set of, you know, regulatory requirements. In our case, what we are producing and what we're selling is food, right? And in terms of the benefits, we are not particularly saying that if you drink this, this is what the outcome will be. What we're doing, we're saying that it is known that fermented foods are good for your health. There's variety of different foods. If you are struggling with, you know, certain types of health conditions, or you want to improve your gut microbiome, you want to improve your health, you've got all these options to try. But if you tried one and it maybe didn't help you, you can try another one which might help you. So what we are how we are marketing ourselves is another option for people that are looking for genuinely produced products that are not commercialized.
Are you doing any, they're not easy to do, but are you doing any studies on the benefits and how well it's absorbed into the body? And because obviously you can, when you see things like vitamins being marketed, they'll tell you it's 100% of your recommended daily amounts, but a lot of that doesn't actually stay in you. How do you kind of work with that, and are you looking into that scientifically?
So what we've done so far is that, first of all, we've analyzed the number of live bacteria we have in the drink, and we've tested several recipes that we have, several flavors, and we tested them along the shelf life that we give to a product, which is about kind of 6 to 8 weeks. And what we found is that each product, each can that we're selling, contains actually over 500 billion live colony forming units, so CFUs as they're known. And this is, we're talking about the live bacteria that are present in the can along the shelf life. This is one thing that we've done. Second thing is that we've analyzed the diversity of the bacteria that is present in each can. And this is where we found something that was quite striking for me. First of all is that the minimum number of different bacteria that we have found in different flavors was 132 different types. So if you take the same kombuchas and the same kefirs, this number varies between like 30 to maybe 60 different strains. In case of kvass, it becomes over 100. And this is what we state on the packaging as well. In terms of what bacteria is actually present, so we're talking 100 which ones, this is where it becomes even more interesting, because kvass itself has not been very well characterized scientifically, and the publications that have been the science that has been published on it unfortunately comes from Eastern Europe, from the universities, and published in the research journals that are not that well recognized for their rigor of their science, unfortunately. So we from our side, we're spearheading this process of learning about the product itself, the diversity of the bacteria present, and of course the health benefits behind it. But if we come back to the diversity of those hundreds of bacteria we have, for example, the dominant species of bacteria, the genus, would be Lactobacillus. And Lactobacillus is currently the most well-known probiotic genus that is present, all the Yakults, Actimels, etc. But what is interesting about kvass is that if we compare, other products might contain 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 different types of bacteria that belong to Lactobacillus. In case of kvass, we have over 20 different strains that belong to Lactobacillus that are present in every single can of kvass. And this is something that no other products on the market actually have.
How do you ensure the consistency between batches?
Very good question. Processes are the keys. And in science you've got the protocols, in production you have SOPs, right? So standard operating procedures, and in order to get consistency, of course, we have to stick to our processes as good as we can in order to make sure that we get the product that is always consistent. But of course we do have the control points. For us it would be the same pH conditions, or the number of live bacteria, or the fermentation that we're tracking every single batch to ensure that the parameters of the fermentation don't change. And of course the conditions. So we have to keep everything as consistent as possible, including the ingredients, to make sure that over and over and over again we get the same product with the same consistency and the same the microbiome.
And how did you determine the different flavors? A lot of trial and error?
Yeah, that's actually a really exciting part. And personally, I don't really have much experience with cooking. But I'm a scientist, and one thing I realized is that being a scientist is not very much different from being a chef. You just need to make sure you follow the protocols, and you try things consistently, and you measure everything, and you experiment, of course, a lot to understand what do you like personally, and then, of course, what do consumers like. In terms of current flavors, so we started with the original kind of kvass, which is also known to be, which used to be known as bread kvass, or liquid bread, they sometimes call it as well, because in the past, for when the people just kind of invented it, they would make kvass from stale bread, rye bread, dark bread. They would just soak it in water and just let it ferment over time. And that makes the original rye and barley bread kvass. This was our first flavor. Then I thought, okay, the people that know what kvass is, they of course know what the taste is and what it's made of. But then for people living in the UK, majority of them have never even heard of it. How could we introduce this drink to them? And this is when I thought, okay, what other flavors are present kind of when it comes to bread, right? And at some point I thought, well, gingerbread, right? And especially in Scotland, gingerbread is quite popular. I personally, when I was a student, I remember buying packs and packs of those biscuits with ginger and overeating them. So I've decided to basically try the ginger, and I was really surprised with the taste. It actually went really well. It really reminded that kind of gingerbread. When we started doing the trials with people, we got extremely good feedback. And people, first of all, liked it because of the psychology behind it, which is a whole topic, a different topic we could talk about. But if they see the ginger, they knew what to expect, and then they tried the drink, they tasted the ginger, and they were happy with it. And after that, they became curious. Okay, I like the ginger, how does the original taste? So that was our way to basically entice them to try the original kvass. But in terms of the preferences, every single person is different. And the last time we were selling at the Edinburgh Food Festival, and we had groups of people coming, and we were giving them 3 different flavors to try, and sometimes people would be fighting over which one is the best. But it's very personal.
And so what are the future plans? Increased production, different flavors?
Yeah, we are always working on several new flavors. I can't tell you what's in pipeline just now, but we are always developing, we're always looking for something new to try. The good thing is, a small company, we can easily and very quickly experiment and go from, let's give it a try, to, let's produce a key kind of the starting batch and distribute it to our customers and see what they say. And this is what we've done with Minberry, for example. Our customers participated in choosing the flavors and gave us the feedback that allowed us to kind of develop it further, which ultimately led to the product that is on the market right now, which is an incredibly cool thing to be able to do. You can't do that in big companies. There are, of course, a whole kind of suite of challenges that we're working on the scientific side of things. So first of all is the characterization of the drink itself. So we really want to see what metabolites are being produced by this community of bacteria that are present inside the drink. And again, that has been very, very minimal characterization done so far. So there's a lot of stuff that we could do. And we're constantly looking for new partners and academic researchers and the groups that would be interested to kind of collaborate with us. Because we can produce stuff, but then analyzing it in science, I wish I could, clone myself 5 times and do all of this and dig deeper into it, but I need to choose what to do on a daily basis, and unfortunately I need to stop my scientific brain from taking over completely, and this is why it would be very nice to kind of find partners to do this research with. And of course the challenges that come into kind of the shelf life and the stability, and how we could improve the shelf life beyond 6-8 weeks of cold storage that we have at the moment. Realizing, from the business side of things, this would be kind of a significant, not challenge, but significant aspect that could prevent us from scaling and growing as fast as we want. So how do we extend the shelf life and improve the stability of the product without affecting the microbes that live in there? And of course there are many easy ways to do this, but none of those easy ways would result in a product that benefits the customers. So how do we preserve the good stuff, but also make the product better and make it more stable so that we can reach more people across the UK?
So